It's my third year in college. While it hasn't been a great 3 years, it hasn't been bad either. I got my apartment with 3 other college friends in my first year. And while we had little to no luxury in the apartment, we managed all right. That was until my second year, when the two of them got a job, started making extra bucks, and moved on campus. I didn't have that luxury. I'm practically putting myself through college from the income I earn from my graphic design job. Oh, by the way, I'm a freelance graphic designer. My mom passed when I was 12, and my dad and my aunt are the only families I have left. Dad had colon cancer 4 years ago, and after his colectomy, he's been pretty docile. He stays with my aunt, and she takes care of him. I go over during breaks to help, and I also send money for his upkeep. It's for these reasons that I can't afford to move on campus with my friends, and I've had to remain in this apartment after my friends left. Also, it's the best cheap apartment there is in this neighborhood. My problems start after my friends left. Since the whole 3 rooms apartment, I'm either going to start paying the whole rent by myself or find others to share the rent with. I put up ads on Craigslist and Facebook for housemates. In the first week after I put up the ads, I get a lot of responses, and I get picky with who I reach out to. But as it turns out, many of them aren't serious or didn't like the environment, so an entire month passes by and I have to pay the entire rent all by myself. The following month is the worst month of my life. Things get really difficult. I almost lost myself. I can't send money from my dad's upkeep, and I barely have anything to spend. I become desperate and start to entertain every response I get. It doesn't take long before I get 2 serious offers from 2 guys, Charles and Edwards. Charles is an engineer. He works in the next city, and for reasons I don't know, wants to have an apartment here. Edwards works in a warehouse. It seems all good and promising. Both of them are scarcely around most of the time. Charles only comes here in the first week of every month and spends 3 days before he goes back. Edwards, on the other hand, comes at different rates. Sometimes he'd be around for a month and then disappear for 2 months. Since neither of them stays around for long at a time, things are good. The only problems I have are bits of irrational behaviors from my landlord, which under normal circumstances is easy to ignore. I am practically living alone. No friends, no relations. Loneliness can be a wonderful thing, and sometimes can be the worst feeling ever. Sometimes I get so lonely, I cry into my pillow. Sometimes I get happy and dance around the house. That's been happening less and less every day, though. Lately, it's hard to focus on anything or care. Sometimes I don't even feel like getting out of bed. The thought of my dad is all that keeps me going. For the first year after Charles and Edwards moved in, everything was fine. That was until Charles gets transferred to the city and has to move here fully. 2 months after that, Edwards too starts spending more time in the house for reasons I can only guess. That's when it all starts. At first, it's little things like leaving the door unlocked overnight, leaving dishes in the sink, leaving the water running in the kitchen. Whenever I would come home and find these things, my heart will almost explode in my chest. I'll correct it and move on, but the more I try to deal with these things, the worse it gets. One morning, I step out of my room into the living room and find Edwards asleep on the couch, but naked, and his girlfriend also naked on the floor. I stand there in shock, my brain raging in pain. Charles comes out in his pajamas and underpants and laughs when he sees Edwards and his girlfriend. I walk back into my room, slamming the door behind me. I make sure it's loud enough to wake them. I hear Charles telling them not to mind me. I sit beside my bed that morning and scream into my pillow. Later, I get up, prepare, and leave for class. From that day, I feel so disoriented about school, and suddenly, sitting through classes feels like mowing down a tree. After school, I find the idea of going back to my apartment revolting. Before Charles and Edwards, returning home was something I always look forward to. Now I dread the thought of it, but I have nowhere else to go. I get in a taxi and go home. The thought of seeing Charles and Edward's faces arouses a burning hatred in me. This is why I feel great relief when I open the door and find the living room empty. I hurry into my room and shut the door. Just as I sit on the bed, my phone rings. It's my aunt. Usually I am happy to hear from her, but somehow that feeling feels distant from me as the days go by. I silent the phone and turn it on its face. I rest on the bed and try to take a few minutes nap. I manage about 5 minutes of sleep. That's all the sleep I can afford for now. Nursing programs can be daunting. That added to my long list of uncompleted graphics jobs. I open up my computer and try to work. I shuffle around for a while, but it feels so hard. I eventually had to put the computer away. I close my eyes and try to get some more sleep. I hear the main door open, followed by laughs and then silence. I take a heavy sigh and turn on my side. That's when I hear a knock on my door. My eyes snap open and I sit up. I'm not sure what to make of it. Neither of them has ever knocked on my door. I walk to the door and open up. Charles is standing there. His breath smells like beer. "Amy," he calls, looking at me seductively. "I was wondering if you'd like to hang out tonight. Edwards, and the girls are watching some Blu-rays tonight." "Not interested," I tell him, and I swing the door. Edwards puts his hand on the doorframe and stops the door from closing. I can't see my face, but I know I'm already wearing a scowl. "You know, I haven't seen you with anyone in over a year. Why's that?" "Mind your business, Charles." I shut the door in his face, almost hitting his fingers in the doorframe. I hear him say, "Your loss," as he walks away. I ball my fists, ready to jam them into the door. I also know that I would hurt my hand and possibly damage the door, which would incur extra expenses. So I let myself calm instead. I go to bed hungry that night, because I'd rather sleep hungry than see their faces. Later that night, I wake up to the sound of Edwards and his girlfriend moaning and knocking against the wall. I try to go back to sleep, but I can't. It's so loud, it's almost as if they are in my room. I bang at the door to make them stop, and they do, for a while. They laugh, and then they continue. When I wake up the next morning, I can't believe what the living room looks like. It's a freaking mess. I've been dealing with this for months, picking up their messes and cleaning up after them. I decide to leave it today. I continue to the kitchen, and to my utmost surprise, the kitchen is in a bigger mess than the living room. I manage to make my waffle without touching anything else. Then I open the fridge to get my milk. My milk box, which has my name written boldly on it. Now, it's empty. I squeeze the milk box in my hand and stomp into the living room. Who drank my freaking milk? I hear them laughing from their respective rooms, but no one answered me. I throw the container at the floor and scream on top of my voice. They laugh even more. 3 months later, it's the start of winter and the temperature is dropping fast. When I try to use the heater, it doesn't work. I've become used to seeing the whole place in a mess. I don't bother anymore. I visit the landlord who lives behind our building and complained about the heater. He tells me not to worry. He'll fix it. 1 month down the line, at minus 20 degrees, and the heater still doesn't work. I visit him a second time, and he's almost yelling at me. He says it's broken and we should fix it if they need it. How does a heater break? I wonder. I go back to the apartment. Charles is home, but Edwards isn't back yet. I decide to wait for Charles before raising the issue. Edwards doesn't return until almost 23 o'clock. It's crazy cold everywhere, and it's freezing even inside the house. When Edwards finally comes, I call him and Charles to the living room. Edward's girlfriend joins in. I tell them I talked about the heater with the landlord, and he's being weird about it. If it really is broken, then let's fix it ourselves, I suggest. Edward's girlfriend glares at me and whispers something in Edward's ears. The two laugh. Charles doesn't know what they're laughing about, but he joins them and laughs too. "What you need is a nice man to heat you up," says Charles, "and you won't need a heater for that." As I stand there, looking at the three of them, something snaps in me. I pick up the tumbler on the center table and smash it into Edward's face. His girlfriend screams. I grab her by her hair and smack her multiple times. Charles calls me bitch and takes me from behind. I wither myself out of his grip and run my foot into his groin. He clutches his groins and falls on his knees. I kick the table at his chest and send him to the ground. Edwards hits me from behind and I fall on my face. He picks me up, cursing angrily. He punches my stomach, and the punch knocks the air out of me. I groan. Then I laugh. He is taken aback by my reaction. He lets go of me and calls me crazy. I smirk at him and throw myself into him, knocking him off his feet. Now, sitting over his chest, I pull out my phone from my pocket and shove it into his mouth. It doesn't go all the way, so I ram my palm into it repeatedly until it goes back down his throat. He screams, then he passes out. His idiot girlfriend gets up. She runs for the door. I charge at her like a bullet and knock her face against the door. Then, I grab her head and I slam her face into the door again and again until she's all bloody and I can see door splinters sticking out of her face. I let go of her and she slumps to the ground. Then, I turn to Charles, who's just getting back to his feet. I bend over Edwards where he lays unconscious. I pull out his belt. Charles curses under his breath. I can barely hear what he's saying. Not that it matters. I fold the belt in Charles as I step closer to him. He falls on his knees, crying. He knows what's coming. I snap the belt and he shudders at the sound. A grin creeps on my face, knowing that I have him right where I want him. I raise my hand, fist firmly tightened around one end of the belt. I bring it down on him and thack! The sound of the belt against his face pleases my ears. So, I go again, and again, and again, until I snap out of my fantasy and find all three of them where they have been the whole time, laughing at me. Charles' girlfriend comes out of Charles' room. She stands by the door, staring at me. I pull my lips in, shut my eyes, and open my fists. I know I have to leave before I lose my mind. I walk into my room, trying to ignore the insults they're throwing at me. They laugh even louder. I shut the door and cower in the corner of my room. I cry screamingly silently. The longer I sit there, the harder the pain in my chest. After a few minutes in that corner, unable to cry out, my eyes scan the room for something, anything. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know I'll know it when I find it. I get up and take my bag. I pull out my Swiss Army knife and return to the corner. I stand there, holding the knife and staring at my wrist as my body trembles. I can't think. My body hurts. My head hurts. My mind hurts. And the way I hurt, there's only one solution I can think of to make it stop. I hear a gentle knock on the door. For the first time since I came into the room, my mind calms. Knock, knock. Amy, can I come in? When I don't answer, the knob turns and I see Charles' girlfriend standing at my door, staring blankly at me. She comes in and closes the door behind her. Then she comes at me with her open arms. I don't know what she's trying to do, so I pull back, but she catches me and pulls me into a tight hug. She holds me like that for a long time without saying a word. Then she finally whispers in my ear, "It's not worth it, Amy. They're not worth it." She pulls out of the embrace and looks deeply into my eyes. I've never seen eyes so compassionate. She doesn't have to say any more. She takes the Swiss Army knife from my hand and sits me on the bed. She gently lays me back and pulls the blanket over me. She shakes her head. I shake mine. Then she nods. She pecks me on the forehead and nods again. She turns off the light and quietly walks out. Just before she closes the door, she glances back at me and gives me a faint smile. When I wake up the next morning, I already know what I'm supposed to do. I take my phone and call my aunt. "I'll be coming home for a few days," I say to her. She chuckles and says I'm always welcome. I open my closet, get my bag, and start packing.